This is Richard Wolff from Democracy at Work, responding to another Ask Prof. Wolff question from our Patreon community. And this question comes from Greg Beglinger. I'm hoping that I'm pronouncing it correctly. Greg asks about the Farmer Labor Party in Minnesota back in the 1930s and uses that example to pose the question, could we benefit from having a third explicitly socialist party contesting in the United States today? And what I might think about it. Well, let me respond as clearly as I know how. My answer is yes, we need it, and we would benefit from it, and so would the United States. Let me explain. The United States went through such a period of anti-communism, anti-socialism, anti-unionism, anti-leftism after World War II on a sustained basis for over half a century. So deep did that purge settle into the American consciousness that more than in any other European country, for example, and indeed more than in most other countries of the world, there's a kind of anxiety, aversion, suspicion, skepticism about left-wing political parties here in the United States that is just this side of pathological. Very strange. Especially these days, when the instability of the United States politically, economically, culturally, the divisiveness, the bitterness, all suggest that not having multiple parties, like most other countries do, is no guarantee for social stability, social progress, or any of the other virtues that have been claimed by the two-party monopoly that dominates the United States and has for so very long. So what would be the advantages of a third party, a socialist party, to be precise? Well, first of all, it overcomes all those last 75 years of anti-leftism built into American culture and politics. It overcomes it by reopening this country to an honest, open-ended, wide-ranging political debate. We had that in the latter part of the 19th century. We had it in the first half of the 20th century, and there is no basis for believing that we are better off without it, and much argument that we would be better off if we included it and reopened ourselves to that. Americans need to relearn what socialism has to offer, to catch up in a way with the discussions about socialism that have been taking place everywhere else in the world more than they have taken place here. Socialism, for example, communism also, Marxism also, have developed, have changed over the last 75 years. But Americans are not up to speed on those discussions because they were excluded from them. This has to be fixed, and a third party, a socialist party, could reintroduce all of those interesting, important, innovative changes in the notions of what socialism means that have happened over the last 75 years in those parts of the world, most parts of the world, where debates and discussions about socialism have continued and been rich in the insights they deliver. But there are more reasons. We now have one kind or two or three kinds of socialism inside the Democratic Party. Bernie Sanders, Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez, and others are socialists. And by their activity, they are, very importantly, introducing or reintroducing socialism into the discourse, the political discourse of the United States. But they are constrained by being part of a political party whose leadership is not only not socialist, but pretty intensively anti-socialist, and that has to impact on what Bernie or Alexandria or any of the others can say and do. I understand that's a limit, and I appreciate what Bernie and Alexandria do within those limits. But I think we ought to also have socialists who are operating openly and politically without those limits. I think it will help Bernie and Alexandria develop their plans, their ideas. I think they will be in a stronger position to argue with the existing leadership of the Democratic Party about the importance of moving in socialist directions, if for no other reason than being able to point to those who are free of the constraints of the Democratic Party. If they are making gains, as I am sure they will, if they are winning supporters, which I'm sure they will, that will empower the socialists inside the Democratic Party. Nor do I put aside the possibility, eventually, of some sort of coming together of the Socialist Party outside the Democrats and the socialists inside the Democrats. That has happened politically in other countries, and I'm sure it is perfectly possible for such an evolution to happen here. And I want the socialist imagination to be free. Yes, it will develop in important ways inside the Democratic Party, living with the constraints that implies. But it will also develop interesting new ideas, plans, programs, platforms, strategies outside those constraints. And I think the future of the United States will be benefited by having both kinds of political activity going ahead full speed. So we now have socialists inside the Democratic Party. I think it is overdue that we also organize socialists openly outside the Democratic Party, free to develop their own political identity, present it to the American people, and see how persuasive and how effective they can be. This is Richard Wolff responding to our Patreon community on the Ask Prof. Wolff platform.